Welcome to the dark place where secrets are hidden. Here, each story is just a piece of what actually is happening around us. Be quiet and listen. When I turned 23, I started looking for a place to live. After a few months of searching, I finally found a house that I was quite happy with. It was a small 2-story house with a wooden fence around the backyard, and most importantly, it fit my tight budget. On moving day, I woke up early and drove the rented U-Haul to our new home. The morning sun cast a golden glow on the slightly faded white paint. I thought to myself, this is it, my home. I set to work assembling the bedroom furniture. The clanking of wood and the screeching of metal screws echoed louder than usual in the empty space. By the time I was done, I was exhausted and collapsed onto the bed. At 10 o'clock that night, I tossed and turned on my phone for a while before drifting off to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. The room was dark, not a ray of light coming through the curtains. I was lying on my side, facing the wall. Out of habit, I closed my eyes and tried to go back to sleep. But a faint sound made my heart pound. The sound of wooden boards on the floor creaking very clearly right in the room. I swallowed, slowly turning around. My eyes were half closed, but I saw clearly. The bedroom door was open, and there was a person standing there, motionless, staring at me. I strained my eyes. The figure stood still, not moving, not breathing. For a split second I blinked, and the space in front of the door was empty. There was no one. I shivered and pulled the blanket over my head. For the rest of the night I didn't dare open my eyes, just lay still, listening to the wind whistling through the cracks in the window. The next morning, the sunlight filtered into the room as if everything last night was just an illusion. I smiled to myself, thinking that maybe I was just too tired. But when I went to the kitchen, my footsteps stopped. There was a handprint on the wooden table covered with a thin layer of dust, so clear I could see the long lines. It wasn't mine. It was much larger and longer. I stood there, stunned. I lived alone. The only key was in my pocket. This house doesn't seem to think so. I decided to dust off the table and clean everything so I wouldn't have to see that fingerprint again. But all day long the same question kept repeating in my head. How did it get there? The next night I locked the door carefully, even tried the window, checked each latch. Everything was secure. I told myself I would go to bed early to regain my strength. Around midnight I woke with a start. There was no distinct noise like the night before, but there was something else that was even more frightening. A scent. There was a pungent smell in the air, like old, damp, rotting wood mixed with rust. I had never smelled that smell anywhere else in the house. I sat up, my eyes scanning the room. The door was still closed, everything was the same. But I noticed the mirror hanging in the corner of the room, something I was sure I hadn't hung up yesterday, was there. I remember leaving it on the floor, untouched. Now it hung neatly, reflecting the room and my trembling figure. My throat tightened. Who hung it? I struggled to stand up and approached. The mirror's surface shimmered in the dim light from the hallway, but as I got closer, my heart stopped. In the mirror, behind me, there was a shadow standing in the doorway. The same figure, still silently watching me. I turned around in panic. There was no one. The door was empty. When I turned back to look in the mirror again, the shadow had disappeared. There was only me, pale-faced, bewildered. That night I couldn't sleep. I turned on all the lights in the house and sat in the living room until morning. The next day I went to work exhausted. In the afternoon, I stopped by a second-hand store to buy some household cleaning supplies. The owner, an old woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, paused when she heard my address. She stared at me, then lowered her voice. You just moved there? That house won't last long. I asked in surprise, well, what do you mean? The old lady just shook her head, her hands trembling as she packed her things into the bag. It is best not to have mirrors in the house, especially in the bedroom. I was stunned. How did she know about the mirror? I never told her anything. That evening, returning home, I stood on the steps, hesitantly inserting the key into the lock. From inside, I heard the creaking of wood. each slow rhythm, as if someone was walking around, waiting for me to open the door and enter. I stood motionless in front of the door, the key still in the lock. The sound of the wooden floor inside echoed, slow and heavy, as if someone were pacing slowly around the living room. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. I took a deep breath, mustered up the courage to push the door open. Immediately the noise stopped. The room was dark, only the smell of mold lingering in the air. I flipped the light switch. A faint yellow light filled the empty room. There was no one there. I searched every corner. Everything was quiet. But when I reached the second floor, I felt a pair of eyes on my back, giving me goosebumps. I turned around. The stairs were empty. I walked into the bedroom. The mirror was still hanging there, neatly, as if it had never been touched. I couldn't stand it anymore. I took it down, dragged it to the back of the house, intending to throw it away. But as soon as I put it down, the mirror's surface reflected, not my shadow, but the empty room behind me, with the bedroom door ajar and the shadow standing silently there. I panicked, covered it with a sheet, threw it in the backyard shed, and locked the door. I told myself, that's it, I don't have to see it anymore. But that night as I lay in bed, I still felt heavy, as if someone was sitting right at the edge of the bed just a few inches away. I didn't dare open my eyes. And then, a whisper rang out right next to my ear. You shouldn't have thrown it away. I jumped up and turned on all the lights. There was no one in the room, but I had clearly heard it. The next day, I decided to find out more about this house. I went to the town library and looked through old newspapers. After hours of searching, I found a yellowed article. A man died mysteriously in a house on Maple Street. The cause of death is unknown. Neighbors said he was often seen standing motionless at the second-floor window, staring out until late at night. I shivered. The address was clearly written. It was the house I lived in. That night, I sat in the living room, not daring to go to bed. I listened to every sound. In the middle of the night, from upstairs, footsteps echoed down the stairs. Step by step, steady, approaching me. I looked up the stairs. In the darkness, I saw a tall, thin, hazy figure standing there. The figure tilted its head, looked at me, and then whispered something indistinct. The sound was faint, but I heard two words. Go. Go. I sat frozen in my chair, my eyes glued to the figure standing still at the top of the stairs. It didn't move, just tilted its head, as if observing my every reaction. My breathing quickened, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the chair. Go. Go. The whisper repeated, this time clearer, hoarse, like wind whistling through rotten wood. I swallowed and tried to shout, Who are you? What do you want? The shadow was silent for a few seconds, then slowly retreated into the darkness upstairs. I sat motionless, my heart still pounding. Part of me wanted to run out, leave everything behind. But another part of me was compelled to know the truth. I held the flashlight and shakily walked up the stairs. Each step felt heavy, the wood creaking under my feet, mixed with the erratic heartbeat in my chest. When I reached the second-floor hallway, I flashed the light everywhere. There was nothing. The bedroom door was ajar. The silence was suffocating. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The flashlight hit the wall and I froze. The mirror I'd thrown into the shed behind the house, was hanging on the wall again, in the same place. I took a step back, my hands shaking. The reflection in the mirror did not match the real room. I saw myself. But behind me, a dark figure was standing close to my back, head tilted, face pale, eyes black as a pit. I turned around in panic. There was nothing behind me. But when I looked back in the mirror, it was still there. And this time, the shadow smiled, a twisted, creepy smile. The flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled across the floor. I rushed forward, used all my strength to pull the mirror off the wall and threw it down. The glass shattered. But at that moment, the room shook as if a wind were howling. I heard several voices whispering at the same time, in a rush, repeating two words. No escape, no escape. I screamed, ran down the stairs and rushed to the front door. When I stepped out onto the porch, all the sounds were gone. There was only the sound of the night all around. I turned around. The door was still wide open, the darkness inside like a giant mouth waiting to swallow me. I never came back. I left that night, leaving all my belongings behind. A few days later, I moved into a small apartment in another town. I thought I had escaped, but every night when I turned off the lights to go to sleep, I saw the same thing. In the bathroom mirror, on the screen of my phone, even on the glass of the window. The figure was still standing behind me, silent, staring. And last night, I heard a whisper right next to my ear, creepy familiar. You shouldn't have thrown it away. Thank you for listening. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe to accompany me in the next scary stories.